Welcome everybody to the video. Today I'm going to be talking about the Apollo robot. Now the Apollo robot is a trend scalper robot that I created. It's an expert advisor and it works in the MetaTrader 4 platform. So what this robot essentially will do is it is going to take trades in the direction of a trend when price is pulling back off of after an extension. So we are going to bank on a trend continuation to make our profits. Now what this robot will do is it's actually going to shoot for some very small gains. However, it's going to rack in a lot of winners. I'll show you in a minute here some back testing, but what you'll see is that overall, this system has a 90+% win rate. It wins very frequently. However, it does go for very small gains, and in some cases it gets itself into trouble. That's why this system is not entirely automatic, but instead uses a little bit of discretion and human intervention at certain points. But for the most part, this robot runs completely by itself and racks in small profits a few times a day and makes a nice steadily increasing equity curve. And I'm going to show you all of that in the backtest soon, but let's talk about the setup itself first. So what this trend scalper robot is going to be doing is it's going to be trading with the trend. In addition, it is only going to use the RSI and the envelopes to make its decisions. As price unfolds on the chart, this expert advisor is going to be looking to trade with the direction of the 200 period moving average. If price is underneath the 200 period moving average, we are only looking for sells. If price is above the 200 moving average, we are only looking for buys. So let's talk about the setup. I mentioned that we use the RSI and the envelopes indicator to judge our entry and our exit. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look for price to close outside of the envelopes and have a sharp reading on the RSI. So let's go ahead and find an example of our sell trade. Because remember, we're not looking for buy trades. We don't want to fight the trend with this particular robot. What we are actually looking to do is we're looking to take sell trades in the direction of the trend. We're not looking for any buys. So when price closes outside of this envelope, we are going to potentially be looking for trades. However, the entry criteria is as follows. We need the RSI to close above a certain threshold, showing that the market is significantly overbought, and price needs to be outside of the envelopes. So price is outside of the envelopes here. However, the overbought reading has not quite been hit. You'll see next in this bar, just barely not outside of the RSI overbought level. But on this particular candle, we are both outside of the upper envelope level as well as a significantly overbought RSI reading. So the robot would take a trade on the very next bar. And all of this would be automatic. You wouldn't have to do any thinking or even watch the charts for this to happen. The robot will execute that particular trade exactly the same way every single time. So what it's going to do is it's going to open a trade and it's going to shoot for something like 10 pips. And what you'll see is that very easy, we took our 10 pips. Like I said, this is a scalper. So we are going for quick and easy to accomplish gains. Now, what you'll also notice with this robot is we don't use a stop loss. At first, people are always like, well, why wouldn't you use a stop loss? That seems risky. But the goal of this robot is to rack in many small gains. And the best way to do that is actually not to use a stop loss, but instead use a very small position size. In fact, I'm talking about using 0.01 lots, which to some people sounds like just a tiny amount. However, what you'll see is that even something as small as 0.01 lots over time and over many trades can create a very nice equity curve and can allow us to compound some nice gains. So that was our first example, but remember here, when price goes underneath, it is underneath as well as the RSI being significantly oversold. However, we are looking for only sell trades in the direction of the overall trend, remember. So you'll see we don't get another reading on the RSI until about here. Same setup. We have a close outside of the upper envelope as well as a significant overbought level on the RSI. So again, we take a sell position and we get our 10 pips. This happens again and again and can make us some seriously nice, consistent profits. So let's go ahead and get into the strategy tester template here. And what you'll see is that we can run a test of this robot. You'll actually see it in action. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open the expert properties. So what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to configure the robot to however we would like to run it. So again, I mentioned that we're using the 200 period moving average to judge our trend. You can change any of these settings if you'd like to. However, I recommend just keeping the trend the same. You can mess around with some of these other settings, but I prefer to keep the moving average period for the trend at 200. You can set the lot size for the first trade and the lot size for the second trade. I haven't mentioned the second trade, and that is because most of the time you won't need a second trade. But remember that we're not using a stop loss. So sometimes trades do go against us. And what do we do if that happens? Well, we could freak out and say that nothing is going right and just throw our computers against the wall, but that wouldn't be very constructive to trading. So instead, we are going to take a second trade. This trade is actually going to be 3 times larger than the first trade. The reason it's going to be 3 times larger is because we're going to try to make up our losses on the first trade and sort of correct the situation with our second trade. Now, this next parameter, the target distance for the first trade, is going to be how many pips we're going for as a target. I mentioned that we were going for 10 pips, which in points is 100 points. So we're going for 100 points, and that's our target. Next, we have the distance for the second trade. This is going to be how far away we're going to enter a second trade if price doesn't go our direction. So in this case, we have a 1,000 point or 100 pip second trade distance. So that means, let me show you on the chart here. That means that right here, if we took this trade and price continued to move up a total of 1,000 points, it's going to take a second trade. So right around here, it's going to take a second trade 3 times larger than the first trade, and it's going to keep the first one open. And what we're going to do from there is going to also go for some number of pips and try to correct the situation. So we've got our 1,000 points for our second trade, and our target distance for the second trade is just like the first one at 100 points. Now remember, any of these settings are up to you to change. But for now, I'm going to keep them the default. You'll see that the envelope period is 10. The envelope deviation is 0.1. If you don't know what these two things mean, you can just do a quick Google search on envelopes, the indicator. It's pretty easy to follow. And the RSI period is going to be set to 4. And the RSI oversold threshold is 20. And the overbought threshold is 80. So what this means is that we are only going to take trades if the oversold threshold has been met or the overbought threshold has been met. So right here, you can see this is our red line here is our 80, meaning overbought. If price goes above it, we are looking for trades, and vice versa on our lower threshold, which is our oversold level at 20. Okay, so with our expert properties, we've got any of these can be toggled and changed to your liking. You can play around with them when you have the robot yourself. But let's go ahead and get into the test itself. So we've checked off everything in our properties, and let's go ahead and click start on this. So what you'll want to do here is, we'll let it load up here. we're going to right click, and you're going to have the opportunity. I'll also, for anybody who decides to purchase the robot, you can get the templates with it as well. So that if I click this template, the Apollo template, there we go. We have our template loaded up on the screen, so we can see what we just saw on this chart, the same template. Okay, so let's go ahead and click start and watch a little bit of the robot's action. First thing you'll notice, we have this panel up on the left. The panel up on the left is going to tell you just some significant data as the robot is running. So when you're running this thing on your account, you'll be able to see that, okay, you have things like the trend direction. You can see that the trend direction is up. You can see the RSI value, and you can see how many trades you're in, as well as what's currently being done by the robot. You can see we're monitoring for trades. We're not in a trade yet. We're monitoring for trades, as well as your equity. So these things will update as the robot is working. So you can watch this panel to receive live updates from the robot. Okay, so let's go ahead and run some of this robot. And let's see if we can get a trade started here and why. Okay, so we are in an uptrend, so we're only looking for buys. You can see we've got a significant upwards level, but let's see if I can catch this. Okay, perfect. We caught it just in time. So what you'll see, notice that we closed below the lower envelope pretty significantly. And, whoops, I think I have these two settings. Sorry about that. Remember, in these settings we set our RSI thresholds to be 80 and 20 rather than 90 and 10. So I just had to make that adjustment. Okay, so we are looking for the RSI to be in an oversold state as well as closing below the lower envelope. Why? Because we're in an uptrend and we're going to look for a scalp trade. So we just opened a buy, and what you'll see down here is this is our second trade that I was talking about. If price goes against us, we're going to look to join in on a second trade. So let's see what happens. Okay, very quickly, we just went right back up into profit, and what you'll see if we go over to our results, we just made $10 on our account in just that quick. And remember, this is an hourly chart, so you're going to have a couple trades a day usually. Let's see if we get another trade. So we can run it and see. I think we should get possibly a trade here if we get into an oversold state. And there we go. Okay, so we've taken a second trade. Again, we're below the lower envelope, and the robot has opened a buy trade looking to make just a quick scalp on this trend. And there it goes. Continuation of the trend, we banked in some more profits. So that's essentially the idea. The robot will continue to do this, and notice that when the trade closes, the limit will automatically be removed, or the limit buy, excuse me, will be removed from the chart for you. All of this will be run automatically. You don't have to manage anything. Again, you can use the panel to keep up with what's going on. Notice we went from $2,000 starting up to $2,000 and $20, and this is all in just the first day of running in our backtest.